Leaders Lounge, and today I'm joined by Jessica Crytzer, who is the Chief Revenue Officer at Lima. Charlie. Hi, Jessica. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, and I'm excited to have you here, and more importantly, for the guest to hear your story and some of your perspectives on the industry as it's changing. So, just to start with, how has your 2024 started for you so far?
Yeah, so it's been pretty fantastic. We saw significant growth in 2023, which enabled us to start hiring more and building out the teams in really every business unit. So it's been a great start to the year so far.
And have you had to start doing a lot of travel again?
Some travel, definitely not as much as it was in last year, but that's ramping up for sure.
And and how's the conditions treating you at the moment in Washington?
Is sunny and pretty mild, so I'll take it.
It's great to hear. At least it's not cold as it was a few weeks back.
Yes.
And for the audience, just so we can get a bit more of a picture about your background, talk us through, who you are, Jessica, and how you got into sales.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I actually did undergrad in pre-law and communications and had an internship between undergrad and law school and decided that I wanted to continue making money. And coming out in the early 2000s, looking for a job in PR was really difficult. And at the same time, I was cut off from my parents financially, and I had to find something. So kept interviewing and realized that sales was a way that I could get a job quickly and start making money. So that is how I got into sales.
When you first got into sales, was it in a tech company initially, or?
So that's an interesting question. I sold copiers. So it's very different than the way things look today. We were actually walking door to door and knocking on businesses' doors to get business cards. But yeah, it was selling copiers, so technology adjacent, I guess.
And when did you get your first break into software, and when did you really understand and feel that passion for technology and helping customers to achieve their business goals?
Yeah, so it kind of started with copiers and realizing IT and how things were connected. And at the time, we were going through this kind of paperless revolution where people were saying we're not going to have paper anymore. And I was recruited by a company called Iron Mountain to work in their a new initiative that they were working on, which was helping people scan documents and store them in a unique way, and also offsite data protection and things like that. So that was kind of my first foray into infosec and what today is cybersecurity, although it looks like a totally different world and feels like a million years ago.
Definitely. And I guess looking back a few years and talking with Bill, who leads service now, I know he also came from kind of a print type of background, and a lot of organizations and people have changed their direction over time. And for you personally, when you jumped into that first role at Iron Mountain, when did you kind of have your eyes set on, driving a team and leading a team, should I say?
Yeah, probably at that point, I didn't. I was very happy being an individual contributor. I was working in enterprise accounts, and I wasn't sure that leadership would ever be for me. I really enjoy running deals, closing business. But as I grew in my career and had the opportunity to start leading a team, I recognize that, yes, I do love closing business, but I also love mentoring people, helping them achieve their professional goals and being a resource to the overall organization.
So you learned that along your journey, and I guess for somebody that would be starting their sales career, for some of the listeners here, what would you say were some of the key skills and lessons that you learned in that early part of your career when you was an individual contributor and you maybe had a mentor or team lead or manager that was able to help guide you through, the difficult moments?
Oh man, there's a lot to unpack there. I would say, I guess the first question for somebody in sales is to ask yourself why you're doing it. Is this purely financially motivated? If so, that's fine. But the second question to ask yourself is this something I enjoy? am I able to endure the highs and the lows, and does it make me happy at the end of the day? The other thing that I think for me was super important was understanding the business need that I'm helping somebody fill, and being very passionate about what I'm selling. And that's always been really important for me. And I think for anyone in their career, early or not, looking at what the company is doing overall and saying, am I in line with their mission? Do I understand the problem that we solve? And do I feel passionately and believe in this enough that I can go out every day and, quite frankly, get kicked in the teeth a lot, right? And continue to smile and know that there are those people that I am going to reach and solve a true business need for them.
So you'd say helping to understand and help to solve the business needs, being able to take kickback or rejection, and being able to ask questions if you don't know, those would be some of the key takeaways there.
Absolutely. And again, I think it comes back to being passionate about the product you're trying to sell and the company that's behind you. I think that's a huge piece of it, because if you're not sure and you're not confident and you're not happy with the company, the leadership, the strategy, the path forward, it's going to make the job really difficult. So I think finding the right fit is a big part of success, having a successful career in sales.
And it's been a rapid rise for yourself into a CRO role, and obviously this is based on merit and success. So the question I have now is really, what did you do that really stood out and enabled you and to grow into that role? And when did you kind of know that leadership was something that you was great at, and that's where your key strengths were, and enabling and growing others?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say being a constant learner, right? So always just trying to learn more, hone my skills, talk to people who were in leadership and understand what they're doing, and how I might be able to do those things in my future. And also with mentors and people who are leading me, having the conversation of, how do I get there? What do I need to do? What goals do I need to be setting? And how do I set myself up for success? And I think once I recognized that I had a talent for developing and developing people and building teams, was when I decided that that's really the path that I wanted to take. I always knew that someday I would be in leadership. It happened a little bit earlier than I thought in my career, and there are days where I questioned that. Or, oh, should I have stayed in ICE a little bit longer? It's a little bit less stress. But at the end of the day, as you build out a team and you see the team's success and you're able to help people grow, it's incredibly rewarding.
And as a leader, what's some of the most satisfaction that you get from your role? What if we talk about very granular things within the team, where do you really get, massive satisfaction?
Yeah, I think when we hit our goals, obviously, or exceed our goals, that's always a great feeling. I was just talking to a candidate earlier about at our offsite, when I realized what last year looked like and the growth and what that took to get there, and how it was truly a team effort. Um, Also, when I'm able to see one of my employees meet their goals or exceed their goals, and the excitement that that brings them, if I'm able to help somebody realize a promotion or a move in an organization, that also is a really great feeling of satisfaction for me. I think another thing that also at this point in my career brings me a lot of joy and satisfaction is when we have a customer who is able to tell us how much we've helped them, or how great it is to work with our team. And I know that the people behind me are doing the right thing, and delivering on what we say we do.
That's great. And are you still very involved with the customer interaction? I guess it goes all the way up to the CEO, right? So you, the CEO, and some of the founders are still very actively helping customers and really getting that feedback to improve the product and the service.
Not as much as I would like, but yeah, there are times and cases where where we are able to have those conversations and be able to get that feedback, and it really is phenomenal when I can go to the team and say, this customer just gushed about how great we've been and how we've helped them, and I think it's one of those lift all boats moments.
And for me, just to uncover a bit about your role as a CRO, how important is aspects like productivity as companies scale? Is that something that I guess Lima Charlie are focused on at the moment, really improving productivity and efficiency at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're always looking for ways to implement different processes to become more productive as a team, increase output. And really the goal for me is always revenue, right? So how do we make everybody more efficient so that we're able to raise that number? But absolutely, we're always looking at process improvement and shifting the way we're doing things to make it better for everyone.
Amazing. And you joined Lima Charlie as the CRO, and having come into the organization with, 6 or 7 years under your belt in the cybersecurity space. I know, from a sales leadership perspective, the skills are transferable, industry knowledge. I know years ago in cybersecurity it was a lot more important. Now, it's not as much so that you have to have done 20 years in cybersecurity to be a CRO. So the question I have here is, what was the core mission you was brought in to achieve when you agreed to join as a CRO?
Yeah, so Lima Charlie is really unique. They were, a small early stage team who had no sales and marketing function, but they had achieved a significant revenue milestone all by word of mouth, inbound, and PLG, which is what intrigued me. I was brought on during the seed round of funding to help them build and scale the sales and marketing team.
So you was brought in really early then at seed round, and then I guess, as you mentioned, just from word of mouth and from product led growth, they were able to really hit a milestone, which is for a lot of companies really impossible from that seed round. So you, I guess, were really brought in to then build the function and the processes and make it you know able to go 10 or 20 times the revenue that they've built up to that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I started with marketing and bringing on a marketing team. Lima Charlie is a very technical and practitioner focused platform. And I wanted to make sure that I wasn't building out an incredibly aggressive outbound sales team from the get go without having the marketing team to support the educational content and those types of things on that side of the house. So it's been a lot of fun.
And would you have said, going back to the decision you made and now, that it was definitely the best decision to focus on marketing first rather than building out a sales function first, just to really enable the customers to understand what the product does and the value that it brings?
Absolutely. And I think I'm not by the books in a lot of ways, and I think that's served me. I like to make sure that the right foundations are in place before doing anything. Before I bring on AEs, I want to make sure they have fully ramped inside sales folks to help support them, and an SE team there to support them. So it may not be on the timelines that most people would just come in and hire everyone. I like to make sure the foundations are there, not only to set the company up for success, but to set the employee up for success. I don't want to bring on, a new team member who doesn't have the foundations that they need to be successful.
Jessica, I love it. I love that you mentioned, making sure that employees are set up, because often leaders are always driving business decisions and goals, and having the right team to be successful, making sure that they can, have a model that's sustainable and repeatable is equally important, so that if you step into a new position or you're leading a different team, that they're, primed to succeed. And just for people that don't know, you did mention that Lima Charlie is quite a technical product. So the question I want to ask you is, how did Lima Charlie differentiate themselves in the SecOps space at the moment?
Yeah, we're very different, and I know everybody thinks they're unique, but we really are. Lima Charlie's SecOps cloud platform, we're not a product. We're very similar to AWS and the way AWS delivers cloud components with cybersecurity components. So if you think of us as really infrastructure or the pieces or Lego blocks that someone would want to put together to build their cybersecurity program, that's what we are. We have a few well-known products that are what we call our primitives in the platform, but they're not our product. And each customer uses the infrastructure in a different way. We're also completely pay as you usage based, pay as you go. transparent pricing on the website, which is also rare in the industry. And it's just a different way of looking at cybersecurity.
And is there plans to roll out new products in that line at the moment?
Absolutely. There will be a lot of exciting features and products added to the platform over the next few months.
I look forward to it. And as a woman in tech, leading teams at the moment, did you ever feel that it, could be difficult to get buy-in from executives when you're trying to plan and execute a strategy?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Being a female in leadership, this question comes up often, and especially in the cybersecurity side of the industry, where there are fewer women than probably any other part of the tech industry. Um, for me, I think what's really important is knowing that you're brought into an organization based on your merit and your experience, and that you have something valuable to add, and also understanding the team that you're joining and making sure that you feel confident that you have a seat at the table. I will say at Lima Charlie, I've always felt like I have a seat at the table. My voice is heard, and I'm able to effectively help impact and lead strategy. Hasn't always been the case, but in the current team that I'm on, I definitely feel that way, and I think I learned a lot in my career when you join a team where you don't have that autonomy and flexibility. You learn what to look for when you're joining your next team, for sure.
Well, that's great. I'm happy you made a good decision and you've got an amazing team around you that are supporting you and making sure that the business can be successful. And I guess on the piece of, enablement, that's obviously something that's huge for leaders. I just want to find out, is there any key initiatives that you're driving within Lima Charlie which are enabling your team and customers to really grow and elevate themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot going on here at Lima Charlie. We are, currently working on training programs. We're going to be launching an incubator, so that's just a little tease of something to come. We have a user conference annually that helps our community grow. But yeah, there's always something that we're working on. We have a show every Friday called Defender Fridays to help raise awareness and bring practitioners together. So there's so much that I think helps broaden awareness, helps bring value to the cybersecurity community, and enables our team when they're out there talking about Lima Charlie, for sure.
And having looked at the team and following a lot of you, regularly, I've seen all of you have got things that you're bringing to the table and helping the industry to get awareness of. And Ross recently brought out a book, if I'm right, about building cybersecurity companies, and that's really taken off in the industry at the moment. So I look forward to reading it. I've only got through chapter one at the moment, so I want to see how that uncovers. But the feedback's been really good, and just in terms of go-to-market initiatives that you're driving at the moment, is there anything that you can share with us that for a leader coming into a new CRO role that could be important or a good value add for them?
Yeah, I would say understanding the ICP very well is really important, and then creating a program of content around that, whatever that might look like, and it could be different for everyone. But I think for us, we understand who our buyer is, we understand the type of content they like, and how we can reach them. And so understanding that, I think if you're coming into a new role, is one of the most important things you can do in the first couple months, and then figuring out what speaks to them and how you can build a program or content around that so that you can reach them, and they'll have some idea who you are and know you as somebody who's bringing value. And I think in cybersecurity, that's really important. I think for many years, there have been a lot of companies who have just thrown salespeople at the problem. And, we end up with this spray and pray, and getting domains blocked by emails that don't make sense. And coming into Lima Charlie, I really wanted to build this team differently. We understand who the people are that we want to reach. It's not everyone, and that makes it a little bit easier and also a little bit more challenging. But in knowing that we're not targeting everyone, it's easier for us to know who that person is at a deeper level and be able to really be targeted and personal in our approach and the way that we connect with people.
And on that basis, then, would you say that when you was building out the teams, you were really building out the kind of outbound marketing strategy alongside the marketing team and involved in that whole outreach process for the reps to be able to, they've got the ICP, they know who they're targeting, but really making sure that the message sticks with a clear offering of how they could be valued by a partnership between Lima, Charlie, and the company that you're reaching out to.
Absolutely. And I think that sales and marketing, especially in a company like Lima Charlie, have to be in lockstep. I consider us all one team, and I will never, think of. I really, it pains me to think of the organizations where sales and marketing are at odds, and there's this contentious relationship. I wanted from day one to eliminate that and make it a really driving towards the goal. MQLs, SQLs, PQLs, that's to me a vanity metric that doesn't equate to revenue. And I don't pay much attention to it because there's so much overlap between what sales and marketing is doing on my team, that is really all looking at what is the organization's goals? How do we achieve Lima Charlie's goals? And how we get there, it doesn't matter as long as we get there.
And I'm not just talking about Lima, Charlie, but across your other roles as a leader in sales, have you found that there is all commonly an issue breaking down silos between different departments? Because as you mentioned, sometimes sales or marketing, customer success, and pre-sales or sales, there's always sometimes, well, not always, sometimes there can be friction. And it's really making sure as a leader that you're able to gel these teams together and see it as a football team. If everyone's playing their position, that you win as a team and you lose as a team, right? So that's obviously something leaders are often at odds at, trying to, get buy-in from the other leaders and make sure that the teams can gel together. Is that something that you've been able to successfully do? I know you've done it at Lima Charlie, but it can sometimes be tricky, right?
I think if you're coming into an existing team, obviously the barrier is a little bit higher. I've been fortunate in my last few companies to build the team. So building the team with that mentality and from the ground up that way definitely eliminates the issues in the future. Now, I haven't had to come into a team and break those barriers down, so I can't speak from experience there. But if you're fortunate enough to come in and build the team the way that you'd like, I think setting those expectations up front, making sure that there's clear communication between the different teams, makes it very, very smooth. I think if you asked any of the team at Lima Charlie how they felt about sales or marketing or customer success or product, they would all say, "Oh, we're a team. We work together," and that's definitely by design.
Love it. And as we move towards analytics as a manager and a leader, these are more important aspects that you focus on. And for companies that are in that scale up period, analytics, we refer back to productivity earlier in the conversation. That's something that's obviously being monitored very closely. How important would you say, given the roles that you've done, how important is analytics and data for you and the sales organization to really review how you can improve the win ratios and the revenue overall for the organization?
Yeah, I think they're all very important as analytics, data, all of those things are incredibly important. For me, the thing that I like to start with is first qualified opportunity. That's the most important number for me. And then, obviously the close ratio from that and where we lost them. And then I think the data gives us the ability to focus and be able to dig deeper and figure out where things went, well, and where we might need to shift our sales a little bit. And being in a startup, I think that's a big part of growing is how do we identify when we're winning and how we're winning and continue pushing on that, and also identifying when we're not winning and making the corrections that you need to push it all more towards that side of the green side of the things.
Perfect. And if we talk about when you're kind of doing your forecasting for the year or for the quarter, is there flexibilities for discounts and deals, I guess, brought into that forecasting, and how do you calculate that for the organization?
Yeah, so with Lima Charlie's pricing being transparent, our discounting is not like a lot of the big orgs out there, right? Where I might be getting a 70% discount or I might get a 30% discount. It's fairly straightforward for us. So yes, I do calculate in some loss or churn and discount. But for us, that's not as significant as an organization that has a very dynamic pricing structure.
And a discussion I was having a few days ago was really about the discount approach when, sales guys are speaking to prospects and they're getting towards the end of the deal. And, they say, oh, well, if you buy in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we can give you a 50% discount. Do you agree that sometimes it takes a bit of gloss away from the value that you're selling on rather than the discount? And what is your take on that as a CRO?
Oh, I'm cringing. I had this conversation about a half an hour before we got on the call, actually. So it to me, I I am diametrically opposed to that approach. Um, and listen, it works on me. I've bought things because somebody has called me and said, "Oh, if you buy this license, extra license, but in the next 20 days, or the next before the end of the month, I'll give you this discount." But then my question is, am I overpaying on the other licenses that I have? So for me, it really, really detracts from the value. And I would never want my team out there operating in that way. And I understand it's a sales tactic. And as I mentioned, it works on me. But I am left with a feeling of, hmm, am I paying a fair price on everything else that I've done?
I agree. And sometimes you can even question, is the product really the perfect product for you, or are they discounting it so much for another reason? So you can have different, thoughts in your mind of why the discount is so large. And sometimes it can, create a bidding war effectively that, oh, well, you've offered us 50%. What about 70? It's almost a benchmark. If you say to somebody, look, if you buy in 3 weeks, we'll give you 50%. If they come back to you in 3 weeks and say, well, we need another 2 weeks, but we want it at 70%, then you're almost, you have to give a 50% discount. And a question I have around first line management, because I've always felt that when you make that transition from an IC into a manager, sometimes, you're still feeling that you're an IC, right? And you're still trying to learn and gather your experiences along the way. And sometimes they can be under intense pressure because they're the direct managers of the AEs on the ground. Why is it that you find, or why is it that you think that first line managers can feel this pressure, and how can, second and third line managers help them get through that transition of becoming a manager and help to manage that stress?
Oh man, I wish there was a magic bullet answer for this one. I think that there's always stress in leadership and the weight of the team. I think you feel that, right? So as much as you're reporting on your team and not yourself, I think at the end of the day, it's hard, especially if you've been an IC for many years, to not look at that and look at yourself in the mirror and think, well, I'm underperforming. So I don't know that there's a good answer to this, because for me, I don't know that that will ever go away. I think many leaders, especially in a revenue role, are always going to look at the number as their number and take that stress upon themselves, even though, the direction and the management that they're giving is to help whoever is underperforming. I think you still take that on. People in sales, myself included, we're a different animal. And I think we all, impart a lot of stress on ourselves. And I don't know that that will ever go away, or I don't have a good sense of how to manage that.
But would you agree that in sales, having been in sales for over 15 years, that I guess a part of that stress drives you on, right? You're not somebody that, will have a bit of stress one day and say, oh, I can't do this anymore. Kind of something that you become adaptable to and use it as fuel to keep going. So that's something I've seen in my career, and many others have said it as well. And I just want to find out from you, is that something that you agree with, that it kind of spurs you on and keeps you going?
Absolutely. And I think it comes from, your early days in a sales career. where you're being told no so often and the pressure is so immense, and you start to train your mind that, oh, if I get to that yes or that win, then everything's fine and I feel better. It's almost like a dopamine hit, right? And so I think you learn that skill early on in your sales career when you're really out there in the trenches and hearing all of the no's and the hang-ups and all of that, or the nasty responses to the emails, all the things that salespeople see. And you start to almost build in a defense mechanism or a way to cope and manage, and it propels you on to get the win. And it doesn't stop in leadership. It's like if you miss a month, then the next month I want to knock it out of the park and make that, forget about that and smooth everything out. So I think that that's a early skill that sticks with you.
I agree. And in terms of for you personally, then, Jessica, when you look at your career to where you are today, what would you say was the biggest learning curve for you? Was it going from an ISC to first line manager, or was it maybe more higher up the ladder when you maybe got to second or third line management? What was the biggest like transition and challenge to get up to scratch and feel comfortable in the role?
Yeah, I think my transition to leadership has been fairly smooth. I think, um, when you first get into management at whatever level, I think that's probably the hardest transition when you were in their role months prior and you understand it, and but now you have to think of things from a different perspective and be a leader and be able to give feedback and be able to have the hard conversations. And I think that early transition is probably the most difficult because you're still feeling like the IC, the person who's receiving the feedback, or in the meeting and having the tough conversation, or someone's having the tough conversation with you, and now you have to flip the script, and there's probably a bit of imposter syndrome that also comes in at that point, where you're not sure if you feel confident or comfortable having those questions. And to be honest with you, giving feedback and having those conversations is a skill, and it is something that takes time to get good at. So it's probably the early stages that are the hardest.
And as you mentioned earlier on in the discussion, is you're continuously learning and developing. So it's something that, as you go into these roles, you're always learning and developing and, homing on your skills. And in terms of when you're as a CRO, you mentioned you're maybe not traveling as much as you would like to. And it brings me to the question of how important is it as a leader to visit your team, customers, and partners to really stay close to the ground and the market and see the new developments, the challenges, and the needs?
I think it's really important. We've moved to a mostly virtual world, and it's been great for a lot of reasons. It allows people to be global a lot more quickly than they normally would be able to. But I think you do lose a lot of the connection and the human element of a team. And so I've actually started adding offices for the sales team. So we have an office here in Washington, D.C. We're going to have an office in Southern California. And the goal will be to get everybody together at least every quarter. But especially early in a sales career, I think you need that camaraderie, that learning from one another and being around people. And I go into the office too, and I spend time with the folks there. But I think it's super important. And Lima Charlie as a team, we are fully remote, but we do get together as a whole team at least once a year, and we're working on getting the smaller teams together more often. In terms of customers, it is invaluable. Having dinner with them, seeing them at a conference, going and seeing their facility, it's amazing. Am I able to do it as often as I'd like? No, but I think when you do have that opportunity, it is magic, and it just builds that bond so much better. And if you can go and see and meet the people who are using your product, it is just a great experience.
I agree. And speaking to some salespeople that I know, they even mentioned, speaking with the CRO or the CEO, sometimes it just makes their day when they have that physical interaction with a leader who has a minute or two to hear their question or their problems and, feel like, okay, they're not as far away as I first thought they would be, and they're very open and receptive to hearing, the challenges I'm facing, and they were actually able to give me some, insightful feedback on how I could approach things in a different way. So that's what I've heard, and even for myself, when I was working in another business and I got to meet with the founders, sometimes you feel like, okay, I'm seeing things from a different perspective, and it helps to spur you on. And just in terms of from a channel perspective, has Lima Charlie developed their channel network already? I know businesses have to do this today to really, grow their revenue and their opportunities.
Today, no, we have not. It's interesting because we don't work with direct channel the way traditional companies do. Although we do work with a lot of service providers in cybersecurity, so MSSPs, and we see them almost as a channel as they bring on new customers. Their revenue with us grows, but in a direct channel model, not yet. We're direct sales organization today.
Great to hear. In terms of leadership and developing talent, obviously that's a key metric and part of being successful in your role. How do you personally differentiate the talent process? I know you mentioned that you was speaking with a candidate at the beginning of the conversation earlier today. How do you feel that you're personally differentiating the talent process for Lima Charlie, and how are you making sure that they have, a good experience?
Yeah, so in hiring, one thing that's important for me is to give everybody on the team or the people who are going to directly interact with this person the opportunity to speak with them through the process. I've seen this go wrong in a lot of former lives, right? So for me, I like to bring in the ADLs or inside sales team to meet with an AE. I want the SEs to meet with an AE. It gives me a different perspective. I sit in on the meeting, I hear the conversation, I get to understand and hear questions that I wouldn't have asked, especially technical or, from the inside sales perspective, things that they're asking that definitely wouldn't have crossed my mind. So I think it gives me a fuller picture of the candidate. And then obviously the last interview is always with the CEO. Hopefully we're able to maintain that for a very long time because I think it's important for um, our founder to meet the new employees and yeah, hoping we can.
I agree, and as you mentioned, it's something that I've always tried to present to customers of mine, that candidates want to feel like they can talk to people within the team, because it's all good speaking to your manager or your CRO, but sometimes they just want to ask the simple questions to a colleague that's already doing the role, and understanding what the day-to-day life is like, what the challenges are, what the prospect within the organization is. And as you said, sometimes it builds for a better chemistry across the organization. So it's something that I agree with, and I hope that more companies you know keep this element of involving other people or peers into the process. And just, for you personally, when you are hiring, especially as businesses are scaling up, right? You don't have as much leeway and flexibility to get the hiring wrong. Is there anything that you look out for specifically when you're hiring, say, a sales manager or director? Because obviously, AE's the skill set, and what you're looking for is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, I think it's, is it ever perfect? No. Is there a perfect answer to this question? No. I think just, clearly identifying what the profile of that person looks like and knowing what it doesn't look like, even through reviewing candidates in the beginning before you put them in the process. And then I think in the process, just making sure that you're very thoughtful about the questions that you're asking, that you can get the responses that help you make an informed decision on if this person is going to be right for the role. Because you're right, in an early stage company, a bad hire is a lot more costly than it is in a 5,000 person org. And so I do my best to make sure that we're asking the right questions, that there's enough exposure. And in some cases also, I will assign, some sort of a takeaway assignment to actually see their skills, because anybody can tell me they can do something, but if I ask you to actually do it and put it on paper, that's really going to be where I can see that these things are possible or not. So it depends on the role, but just understanding what the profile is and making sure that you're sticking to that and not adding any bias into it. Like, I really like this person, and just keeping the emotion out of it and sticking to script of what you need.
And has there been a situation where you've had that first conversation with a candidate? I know it probably has happened many times, but you've had that first conversation. You say, "Look, I just have that gut feeling that this is the person that we need for the team." Have you just had that from the first 15 minutes of a conversation?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We have. Yeah, for sure. And it's worked out very well with those folks. So,
Nice to hear. And sometimes going with the heart, always works. Sometimes, rarely it doesn't. But I guess when you have that gut feeling, it's good. And just for you, as a CRO, having done the role, what would you say are important skills for a top CRO or chief sales officer within an early stage startup?
um, being able to pivot quickly, not being afraid of failing fast and running experiments, um, you know, being able to look at the business holistically, and when you're doing your strategic planning, considering all pieces of the business and how your decisions will impact other facets of the business, and just, yeah, I mean, being very detail oriented and being able to really manage your time, because it can get out of hand quickly where you're taking on too many tasks, or you're working way too many hours. So just being really rigid about your schedule, your time, and making sure you're sticking to your task, and keeping everything straight, I think, is super important.
And what is your take on hiring and firing quickly? Because I know this is a subject when I speak to some friends in the industry, they always say that, look, especially in small organizations, you need to have the ability as quickly as you can hire somebody that if you decide, okay, this isn't the right hire, that you can let them go. How crucial would you say it is, especially for smaller businesses?
I think it's really important. And in an early team, the wrong hire can have a ripple effect throughout even other business units that aren't attached to your business unit. And so I think identifying when somebody's made it through the process and aren't the right fit very quickly is important. And I've had to do it. I'm sure most people have, and it's never a pleasant time of your career. But I think just knowing when somebody's going to be a better fit somewhere else is really important.
And just before we move on to the quick fire questions at the end, I just wanted to ask you, of course, it's not without a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that you've got to where you are. For other female leaders that are leading teams, what would you say? How have you been able to balance family life with a career? Because I know there's a lot of hours involved, a lot of extra commitment to get to where you are. How did you navigate that, and what was some of your mechanisms that you were able to manage this with?
Yeah, this is another tough one. It's one of those things where, time management and being very dedicated to your work hours, and knowing when it's time to shut things off is really important. But again, that's one of those things that's easier said than done. But I can't say that I do it well, but making sure that you carve out time for yourself, for your personal life, and trying to keep your weekends as not work focused as possible is really the advice I would give, which I'm sure is the advice everybody would give. But does it actually work that way in practice? Not always, but having that balance is so important. And I think people need to be more okay with saying, I'm taking a day off. I used to take vacation and have my laptop on vacation, and I've taken a few vacations recently where I did not, sign in, and that's actually really good for rejuvenation. So those things, as painful as they might feel, the business still runs. I was shocked. Like, I'm just kidding, but you feel like you're so necessary. It's like, no, a few days off is not going to hurt anything, and you come back and everything's fine. So
As you see, like you said, almost feel obligated and guilty to put your laptop down, right? You feel like if I step away, things aren't gonna, run as smoothly as they should. But you've always got trusted people in the business that will manage your workload while you're away, or simply say, look, she's out of office. in a few days, Jessica will be back and we can take it from there. But as we move on to the quick fire questions, I hope you're going to like these, Jessica. The first one is, would you call yourself more of a runner or cycler?
Cycler.
And do you cycle weekly or daily or?
Weekly. Indoor in the winter and outdoor in the summer.
Nice, nice. Have you got a proper sports bike then or a mountain bike?
I actually go to my gym to spin. So yeah.
Nice. And if you had a go-to dish that you like cooking at home, what would that be?
Ooh, chicken parmesan.
Mm. And do you have a favorite sports team?
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Or are you from Pittsburgh or you've just
I
got a
am. I
life?
am from Pittsburgh, so all Pittsburgh sports teams are close to my heart.
Nice. And where's somewhere that you would love to visit but maybe haven't had a chance to?
Ooh, Sardinia is on my list.
I haven't been either, but I'd love to go. And just as we move to the last part of the podcast, Jessica, I want to ask you a question from our last guest. He's also been in the cybersecurity space, maybe more in the client success space. He asked me to find out, how would you personally define return on investment? Obviously, it's a struggle. Many people define it differently, but for yourself, how would you define a good return on investment?
From a customer perspective, or
Yeah, from a customer perspective, I would say.
yeah, I mean, I think there's obviously dollars and cents, and you can look at if you're replacing a product, is there less money being spent or less man hours being dedicated to completing a task. Um, but I think that's great in the sales process. But I think in terms of renewal and keeping a customer, it's making sure that you are very committed to communication and understanding the team of the customer and how your platform or product is enabling other things outside of the day to day, why they may have bought it, and making sure to continue tying that story back for the customer. Because I think at the end of the day, the dollars and cents is great when they're signing the contract, but they're only going to keep you if it's really adding value in a different way.
I agree, and thank you so much for sharing your answer. And is there a question you would like to ask the next guest who will be featuring on our show?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in thinking about the changing macroeconomic climate, I'd love to know what changes leaders are thinking about for 24, 25, and also how far are they scoping out, these changes that they're considering.
Amazing. I'll be sure to ask that next week. And again, Jessica, I want to thank you for your amazing insights, for the answers to the questions, and more importantly, for sharing your overview of your career to date. But for anyone that wants to connect with you, Jessica, or learn more about Lima Charlie, would you recommend them connecting with you or one of the sales reps?
Yeah, they connect with me on LinkedIn is perfect, or it's jessica@limacharlie.io. Fairly simple.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jessica. It's been a pleasure having you, and I hope you have a great week.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye bye.